Alright guys, we're going to read chapter 9 of Zach's Lie. Try to put yourself in Zach's shoes. School is starting soon. School starts tomorrow for him. And try to imagine what he must be going through, and try to imagine that this perhaps has happened to you. Monday, September 5th. This is about when school starts. School starts tomorrow. I've spent the last several days shopping. Incredibly, my arms and legs have outgrown the clothes I bought just last spring. If this continues, I'll be called Spider Boy. Mom offered to drive me to Salt Lake City, where there are better choices, but I told her I can make do with Elko duds. She needs to get her store open and has better things to do than haul me around. The best thing I found shopping was a black leather backpack that's just the right size for my journal, pencils, and a few books. It was kind of expensive, but Mom took pity on me and let me buy it. I'm nervous about school. I haven't started in a new school since I was in kindergarten. Back then I didn't know enough to be nervous, but now I'll be the new kid and I don't know how to do that. Zach sat across the cluttered desk of the principal of Elko Middle School, Mrs. Pyle. She was a heavy-set woman with red hair and reading glasses balanced on the end of her nose. Is that Zach, Z-A-C, Z-A-K, or Z-A-C-H? Mrs. Pyle asked. Zach didn't know. He had never seen his new name spelled out. He stalled for time. Is this a test? Wrong answer. Mrs. Pyle's eyes narrowed and her lips tightened into a frown. No, this is not a test, she said stiffly. Which is it? Z-A-C-K, he guessed. Mrs. Pyle opened the thick envelope his mother had given him and shook out a pile of paper onto her desk. Among the papers were Zach's fake transcripts. He hoped they had improved his grades. Mrs. Pyle examined one of the papers and her frowned. Deepened. Guess they hadn't improved them, Zach thought. Are you trying to be funny? She asked. I beg your pardon? She dropped the sheet in front of him. It was a copy of his new birth certificate. Zachary Colin Granger, it said. Colin, Zach thought. Z-A-C-H, she informed him, short for Zachary. It went downhill from there. He didn't know how to spell his name. Where did you move from? She asked. Portland, Oregon. Zach gave her the abbreviated version of his bogus history. I used to live in Portland, she said. Where did you live? Zach had never been to Portland and had no idea where he was supposed to have lived. So much for weeks of indoctrination. Aunt Doris and Uncle Don should have thought of this. We moved around a lot, he replied lamely. Mrs. Pyle didn't like this answer either, but she didn't pursue it. She picked up another piece of paper. Your parents are divorced? Zach nodded, hoping this did not come true. Is your father still in Portland? Zach's next lie was interrupted by the bell. Here's your class schedule. Mrs. Pyle handed him a sheet of paper. Zach stood up. We have 1,122 students, nearly 300 more students than we can hold comfortably. The point is, Zach, you are not the only transfer student, and you aren't the only student with divorced parents. I think if you give us a chance here, you'll discover that you've landed in a pretty decent place. Zach's first class was P.E. Nothing like starting the day in a locker room with a bunch of naked guys you've never met before. Zach muttered to Commander If. If they issued him gym clothes, he took his clothes off and put them in an empty locker. Commander If complained about being shut up in the locker, but Zach didn't have a choice. His shirt and gym shorts didn't have pockets. There was a lot of towel snapping and general horsing around. Zach was used to this. What he wasn't used to was not participating himself. No one seemed to notice him. They filed into the gym, and the PE instructor had them line up. "I'm Mr. Dugan," the instructor said. "When I call your name, raise your hand." As he called out the names, he checked them off on his clipboard. "Okay, are there any names I didn't call out?" And Zach raised his hand. Mr. Dugan stood in front of him. "Your name?" "Zach Granger." Mr. Dugan checked his clipboard. "You're not on my list. Are you sure you have PE first?" Zach nodded. "You're tall for a 7th grader." And Zach felt everyone's eyes on him. "Let's see your schedule." "It's in my locker." "Well, go get it." When Zach returned with the schedule, the class was doing laps around the gym. "Counterclockwise," Mr. Dugan shouted. He stood in the middle, making notes on his clipboard. Zach broke through the circle and handed him the schedule. Mr. Dugan looked it over, then wrote his name on the clipboard. "You play basketball, Zach?" "No," Zach said. What a waste. It seemed to Zach he was disappointing everyone today. "Clockwise," Mr. Dugan shouted. The group reversed direction. "Well, get moving, Zach." "Or can't you run, either?" Not very well, Zach thought. The pins and screws in his legs gave him trouble if he put too much stress on them. "Okay, run in place. Lift those knees. Go, go, go. Use those legs." When Jack had gotten out of the hospital, he couldn't walk. Neil Osborne would not accept this. He wheeled Jack into their daylight basement, which he had converted into a gym, while Jack was in the hospital. There were weights, punching bags, jump ropes, and in the center of it all, a small boxing ring. "What's this?" Jack asked. "I'm going to teach you how to box." "Hard to do from a wheelchair, Dad." "Well, get you out of that contraption in no time." "What does boxing have to do with my legs?" 80% of boxing is leg work." Jack stared at his father. "I quit my job, Jacko. I'm going to stick around home until you get back on your feet." "You quit flying?" "Well, yeah, for the time being. I've been wanting to get out of the commercial airline business for a long time now." "What are you going to do after I get back on my feet?" "Buy a small airline company if I can swing it, go into business for myself." With the help of a physical therapist and boxing, it had taken nearly a year for Jack to get back on his feet. After PE, Zach showered and followed the herd of sweating bodies to his homeroom. The teacher's name was Mrs. Miller. When everyone was seated, she announced that the desk they had chosen would remain their seat for the rest of the year. Zach was relieved that he had found a desk in the back row near the windows. Several other students were not as thrilled with their choice. When the moans over the seating arrangements died down, Mrs. Miller said she wanted everyone to stand up in turn and introduce themselves. "I know many of you know each other, but I want you to act as if you don't," Mrs. Miller said. "I'll start. My name is Mrs. Miller. I've been a teacher at Elko Middle School for 22 years. This will be my last year teaching. Next year at this time, I hope to be sitting on a warm Mexican beach, watching whales frolic in the cobalt blue water. I trust you'll help me make this last year of my teaching my best." One by one, the students stood and introduced themselves. Some of them made jokes. Some took the exercise seriously. Most of them seemed to know each other. But there were several who were new to the school, like Zach. By the order in which Mrs. Miller was calling them, it looked like Zach was going to be the last to be called upon. He was dreading it. Mrs. Miller called on the girl sitting in front of him. All Zach could see was her long, shiny black hair and tight blue jeans. "I'm next," Zach thought. "What will I say?" "My name is Catalin Cristobal," the girl said, "but most of you know me as Cat. I was born and raised in Elko. I don't know what else to say." Catalin turned around and smiled at Zach. He stared at her like a deer frozen by headlights, unable to turn his head away. The sound of laughter brought the room back into focus. Zach looked around and saw that the laughter was directed at him. And last but not least, Mrs. Miller beckoned with her hand. Zack got to his feet awkwardly, his face flushed with embarrassment. Several people commented about his height. "My name is Zack Granger. We just moved to Elko." He started to sit down. "Where did you move from?" Mrs. Miller asked. "Portland." "Oregon or Maine?" "Oregon." "Please don't say you used to live there," Zack thought. "Welcome to Elko, Zack," Mrs. Miller said. Zack sat down, relieved. He didn't hear much of what Mrs. Miller had to say after that. He looked out the window to avoid looking at Cataline's black hair. The lunch bell rang. He went to his locker to dump his books and discovered that Cataline had the locker right next to his. Ooh. Rather than face her, he carried his books to the cafeteria and pretended to read while he ate. I don't know, it sounds like a little foretaste to me, a little bit of foreshadowing. All right, good chapter.